Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and it's Usainimese Jale, founder of Mr. Jale Business Solution and Consulting, where we provide business consulting and advisory services to small and medium scale enterprises. And today I'm going to be talking about franchise, what it is, and whether or not it's right for your small business. So first and foremost, what is franchise? In a nutshell, franchise basically is obtaining the license from an already established company to build a branch of said company in your location and operate that branch in your name. So, for instance, back in the day, a lot of the Mr. Bigs you had around you, the Mr. Bigs location you had around you were franchises. Or, in more current example, a lot of the Cornwall filling stations or Total filling stations are all franchised from the original organization. So, the question one would ask himself is, or herself rather, is why would anybody decide not to trade in their own name and decide to trade in someone else's name? And usually, when you're obtaining these licenses, if it's corn oil, when we obtain the license for a client, it was about 1.4 million, I think. Then you buy 4 million worth of engine oil. I can't remember the exact details, but usually cost a lot more to take someone else's business name or license to operate, and the question is, why would I do that? So the truth is, the reason why people do franchises, it drives sales. Good name sells. So at the end of the day, but that said, with everything, it has its advantage and disadvantage. So the idea of today's topic is to present the various factors, because as with most things in life, there is no yes or no, right or wrong. It just depends on the factors and the variables available to you that will not determine whether or not such a decision is good for your small business or not good for your small business. So first things first, I will start by saying, okay, what are the advantages of franchising a business? So what are the advantages of saying, instead of establishing an eatery in Uniben and calling it Mr. Ejale's Eatery, why, what is the advantage of, instead of using Mr. Ejale, using Matthias, calling it Matthias instead? Because if I decide to, open an eatery and operate it under Matthias, that would be an example of a franchise. So the question is that, what are the advantages that accrue to me doing that instead of using my name? So one of the advantages, first and foremost, is brand equity. So naturally, what happens is that if the parent company or the franchisor, that's what they call it, has a strong enough brand name, that brand equity extends to you, because basically, like, oh, these guys, I know them, did you try? And and you have that franchise, for instance, a Cold Stone, typical example. So everybody knows about Cold Stone, from Lagos, Abuja, Cold Stone. So naturally, if you find yourself in, and I heard, okay, the Cold Stone is coming to Benin Sapler Road. So, naturally, anybody that comes from Lagos or Abuja or whatever, they will want to go to Cold Stone, because Cold Stone has a very strong brand name when it comes to, ice cream, the Nigerian space. So that's the number one advantage. Number two is business assistance. So usually when you obtain the license from the parent company to operate a franchise in your unique business location or whatever, most times they provide you with training, and a lot of other business assistance. They give you supplies and stuff like that. If it's something that like you are selling, like for instance, like the oil and gas sector, they, some companies, they would want to provide you products. You understand? So that is an added advantage. Then the third one is goodwill. So naturally, the goodwill that the brand experiences, it extends to you as a franchisee. That is what you are. You obtaining the license to operate in their name. You are a franchisee. So the goodwill of the parent company tends to extend to you as as a branch or unit of that big parent organization. So having said that, here are the disadvantages of, I would say, running a franchise. Number one, market mismatch. So what happens is that sometimes the market that you are, franchising, or the market in which you want to run your franchise might not be right for that particular product. So yes, the product might be doing well in a more metropolitan city. It can be doing very well in Lagos, can be doing very well in Port Harcourt, Abuja, most of the big cities. But you might decide, okay, this thing is doing very, very well in these cities. Let me obtain a franchise and do it in a small town or something. And you might realize that because most times when you obtain a franchise, the price is set across the board. So what they're selling in this town, if they're selling what they're selling in Abuja or Lagos, usually the same price. So what happens is that what if you set up a franchise in a location whereby the disposable income of the individuals in that location is a lot less than those in the big cities. And what happens is that they cannot afford those products. Or, for some reason, maybe cultural bias or something. So let me give you another example is, let's assume a franchise that sells pork meat, and you go and you obtain that franchise to go and sell pork meat in the north. Now, for those not conversant, pork meat is haram. It's forbidden in Islam. So if you go and set up such a franchise in the north, then you're selling yourself short because it's against the tenets of their religion and their culture. So that's an example of a market mismatch. Number two is, in some instances, that goodwill can become a double-edged sword. So what happens is that you can be JJJ operating your franchise in your location and you are doing very well. But if the parent company has an issue or there's some sort of scandal or something, that goodwill that we talked about as an advantage can become a disadvantage, and that bad will flow onto you who's operating a franchise in your own location. So something might have happened in Lagos and they'll tell you there's a Calabar that, oh, are you not from that company that did such and such? And you start explaining yourself that no, it's not also, I mean, franchise. And customers will not have the patience to listen to that. They'll throw blanket statement and they'll paint you just as black as the original parent company. The third disadvantage, or that I will call a drawback, yes, is that you are not building your brand. So let me explain. So for instance, going by the example I cited earlier, I obtained a franchise license to run Matais in the front of Unibe or anywhere around Unibe, for instance. Of course, mind you, there are a lot of Matais in Unibe. I think there are like four at this point, so I'm just citing an example. But no matter how well I run that business, the customer service is on, fleek, everything is lit, everything is well done. At the end of the day, to the customer, it is Matthias. It's not Oselemese Jali running it. It's Matthias. So what happens is that I don't know if our franchise agreement, you know, ever expires, that goodwill goes with Matthias. It doesn't. I do not retain it. So naturally, when the franchise agreement ends, naturally Matthias, the color, the logo, it's all been trademarked. I cannot keep using it. So I will have to change to whatever name it can be, Mr. Ejale's Eatery, whatever. At that point in time, I have to start building that brand from scratch. So that is one of the drawbacks of franchising. You are not building a brand for yourself, you are building a brand for someone else. Number four drawback of this is that usually franchises are more expensive. So I threw out an example earlier when I talked about oil and gas industry where you know a client of mine were running a particular station, it's a joint venture, and I brought some part of the money. I brought some part of the money from a principal, and I helped my principal invest in this particular location. And initially the plan was, okay, we'll use the parent oil and gas company, we'll use their name, their registered business name to run that station. At the end of the day, we're like, you know what, this particular location is already saturated. We need to use a well-known, a household brand name, and we decided to go with corn oil. And at the end of the day, that cost us an additional 2 million. 2 million and more. Yeah, because the license then to rebrand, because initially the brand the Aqua board and everything was ready, so we had to like take it down and put. So usually the moral of the story is that it's more expensive when you are obtaining a franchise. So that is something you should take into consideration. So number five drawback of franchising is in low margins. Now on a normal the low margins aren't a problem, but here's the catch. So the idea is that okay, you are obtaining license from a big brand name to operate a particular location in that brand's name, naturally with that brand's goodwill as an advantage to you. So the assumption is that even with the low margins, you have a high turnover rate. So for instance, if you are making 5 naira on a unit, but because it's a big brand, you can sell 100,000 units on a daily basis. That's already 500K. So it's not really or $1,000+ if you're talking USD. But the problem here is that if you don't have those high turnover and you are now matched with low margins, you are now at a disadvantage. And also you pay royalties to the original, to the parent company. So these are certain things you have to take into consideration when you are franchising. So there it is. Franchising, whether these are the advantages. I've talked about the advantages, and these are the five drawbacks or disadvantages. I won't call them disadvantages. I'll call them drawbacks. At the end of the day, like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. The essence of franchise is to drive sales. You understand? But having spelled out the plus and the negative, I think you as an individual should now understand what works for you. Like I said, for the advantages, you have the brand name, you have a brand name working for you. You have business advice from these guys, and their goodwill is in your favor. Like I said, for the drawbacks, there could be the market mismatch. You could there's the franchise naturally is more expensive. Number three is that goodwill could be a double-edged sword. So if the parent company should ever mess up, that bad reputation will flow onto you as well. You're operating with low margins. And what's number five? I can't remember, and I just go through the video. So the point is, there it is. So like I said, there's no right or wrong answers, but look at both variables, the good and the bad, and see what works for you. But for me, like I said, at the end of the day, franchise is to drive sales. Don't be so hung up on your name or your brand name that you lose sight of the bigger picture. So for me, if it depends. So for me, my own personal advice is, if your brand name is not relevant to your overall strategy, then go for it. If franchise is going to drive sales, then go for it. Like I said, the oil and gas company I worked with, it's the parent company is hardly known. They operate several stations with several names. So for them, their own is return on investment. They have a lot of investors. So their own is return on investment. So they don't really care about establishing a brand name. They want to drive sales as much and as quickly as possible. That is their overall business objective. So for you, you might have plans in the future to extend your brand name into other products. So you might start out making pure water. Tomorrow you want to make fruit juice and all of that. If that is your long-term, objective or long-term goals, as it were, then I don't think franchising is for you, because at the end of the day, you'll be building someone else's brand at the expense of yours. So I think, but at the end of the day, like I said, it boils down to your long term. I think it's more of a long term decision. What are your long term goals, 5 to 10 years, and how relevant is your brand name to your 5 to 10 year goal? That will not determine whether or not franchising is right for you. But like I said, at the end of the day, franchising is to drive sales. So if at any point in time I lost you, I know this topic is a little confusing, please I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. So it's Osalemesi Ejale, like I said, founder, managing partner, Mr. Ejale Business Solutions and Consulting, where we help small businesses, scale to the next level, and we help entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs with ideas, turn those ideas into full-fledged businesses, with business models and all of that. So thank you. Have a lovely day and God bless you.